Chip Patterson, who will get the added benefit of having more time to prepare himself for Champions League football, which will, or soccer, if you will, which will come up at 3 o'clock. Although there is a match that is already underway, I do not know what is going on in the first match of the day. 4 matches today. There were 4 matches yesterday. I want to bet on one of them. I'm very excited. I might place a bet on the 3 o'clock games. I don't know. Chip Patterson, Cover 3 podcast, CBSSports.com. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Club Bruges just found the back of the net to take an early 1-0 lead over Atalanta. Of course, as a Serie A diehard, just like the SEC chants from them, I go, Serie A, Serie A. You're heartbroken here, but Atalanta is a high-scoring team. I think they can storm back. I think they will. Actually, I was thinking about a draw in that match because I believe Atalanta will find their way through, but either way, I'm too late. I'm too late for that. All right, let's. I want to dig into Michael Lombardi a little bit because now for people who don't know, he's Carolina's football general manager, has a history of working with Bill Belichick, and has basically spent his entire career in the National Football League. And he said a couple of things about, we're going to do this, we're going to be this type of a program. I don't know how much of the Lombardi fireside chat you caught yesterday. I did not. We was coincided with me prepping for this. But he basically said we're going to be the 33rd team of the National Football League. How much of the bluster, I'll just use that term, I don't mean it in a negative way, but to talk about we're going to be a program, blah, blah. How much of that stuff do you buy into? I buy into the pitch. I buy into the way that they sold it to the university. I buy into the way that they're selling it on the recruiting trail. I don't buy into it when I'm setting my expectations for the 2025 college football season.
Right.
And that's sort of where this normally leads to a fork in the road. That, the pitch, hey, we've got the best coach who's ever coached football. We've got a tremendous university. And when I'm able to carry those things into a potential recruit, those things carry a lot of weight. That is true. But that does not change the immediate outlook for North Carolina football. And so that's why you've got 2 trains that are going on different tracks. And the question is, will the success or lack thereof, what happens in 2025 in the immediate future, how does that impact what you're trying to build for 2026 and beyond? Because, there were skeptics about whether Bill Belichick was even going to make it to the sidelines for the 2025 opener. Yeah. I believe he is. Let me go ahead and say that.
I believe. But you and I have talked about it. I've always believed that he was. There has never been a moment, and I mean this seriously, there was never a moment that I thought, once we had that press conference, he was going to be on the sidelines when they played TCU. I always thought that. I never bought all of the other stuff, ever.
Will he be gone after 1 year? Will he be gone after 2 years? Are we just gonna, what happens if he does leave? Does the staff stay together? Is there a Steve Belichick future? All of those things are all after this year.
Yeah.
So when Michael Lombardi is making the same pitch to the media that he is making to parents and that he is making to prospective players, that's great. That is a sensible sales pitch. But whether or not it lands, whether there is stickiness to that sales pitch, a lot's going to depend on what happens on the field in 2025. And I'm not projecting anything that is wildly out of the realm of possibility based on where North Carolina football has been in the positive or negative. But I do think that there's still a lot of work left to be done for the 2025 roster. And I'm not sure if all the 33rd team talk is going to line up with actually being the 33rd team unless you are number 33 of 33 teams in the NFL. So it's, roster still has some work to do in the spring portal. There's player development that needs to be done. It's a team that, based on what I look at right now, can be a bowl team. It is not a team that can contend for the ACC championship. And as I've said to you before, you're paying a coach $10 million a year in a winnable ACC, the expectation is that he has them competing for an ACC championship. If he does, then hey, the sales pitch has worked. You did it. Best coach in football, coached him up and got him into that conversation. If he doesn't, well then, what has the sales pitch worked on the 2026 class? What's your transfer portal activity the next season? And those two things, again, two trains, separate tracks. What happens in 2025? What happens beyond? When I listen to North Carolina football talk about selling North Carolina football, it sounds great. But based on the roster that is currently listed on the website, it is not in line with winning the ACC in the 2025.
All right. Chip Patterson is here, as he is every Wednesday. We're a little earlier today. Clinton Yates will come at the bottom of the hour. So there's a ton of things that I want to get to just from that, because I said a few minutes ago that I think this will be a 3-year project for Bill Belichick. It's unreal. Right, that would be. We'll find out. Actually, we'll probably know by year 2 whether or not this is a viable plan. I don't think you're going to have any clue in year 1. The only thing I will say that could come out of year 1 is that if it's close, Carolina will win because of the guy on the sideline. Because to me, that is the difference. That's where Belichick can help you in the margins of games, because we have for years. And this is no disrespect to Mac Brown or Dave Doran or a lot of coaches. There are only a handful of coaches, I believe, in college football that almost always max out on the wins and losses. Only a handful. Almost every one of them loses a game he shouldn't lose. Almost even the good ones. There's one of, Mac Brown's going to go in the Hall of Fame. He's lost tons of games that he probably should have won. For me, that's where Belichick can get over on other coaches, but it would mask the real issues of the roster, of the pipeline, and I talked about this last hour. I just want your thoughts on this. The difference between the ACC and the SEC, between the top of the Big Ten and the ACC, between the top of the Big Ten and the bottom of the Big Ten, is all the line of scrimmage. Everybody's got wide receivers. Everybody's got quarterbacks. Everybody's got running backs. Everybody's got defensive backs. There's a DB at ECU, could be a first-round pick. We got a running back from Boise State, it's going to be a first-round pick. But for the most part, if you look at where the players are coming from in the top, really 2 rounds of the draft, on the offensive line, on the defensive line, they're all in a handful of spots. They're in the SEC, the top of the Big Ten, Notre Dame. To me, that's where is Bill Belichick going to make an impact on that part of Carolina's roster, because they can't be great unless they improve that.
I mean, God only made but so many 6'5", 330 players. There's there's a little bit of there's a little bit of the just looking at it and thinking that this isn't. It's not necessarily going to be a spot where they're going to be able to dominate. I know that I went through and I was actually identifying based on some of their transfer portal additions, the defense is almost going to be entirely new.
Right. And
they've got some players and, they've got some players that know exactly what they're doing. You got 3 players from Minnesota, 5 players from Washington. I mean, you are going to get some quality athletes and you're bringing them in, but you've got to get them on the same page and you've got to get them ready to go. I will say this, in the ACC, because you are right when you talk about the difference between the Big Ten, top of the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the lines of scrimmage are huge. I do think that in the ACC, if we're to just totally close off the vacuum and only look at the conference,
right,
being good at the line of scrimmage might not be enough. The Pitt Panthers are good at the lines of scrimmage almost every single season.
Right.
But when they have horrendous quarterbacking, they might lose 6 games after starting 7-0.
Right. You can't be bad at quarterback.
Right. But there are other teams within there are teams in the ACC that have contended for ACC titles without elite play at the lines of scrimmage while also being good enough elsewhere.
Right.
That is where having an imperfect roster across the entirety of an ACC schedule does not prevent you necessarily from being able to compete. And so what can you maximize out of a quarterback room that is Max Johnson and Ryan Brown. What can you maximize out of some of those skill position players that went into the transfer portal but pulled their way out because they want to come back and they want to be a part of the Bill Belichick era? And what can you maximize from a defense that, while it does not have just 8 bodies ready to come off the sidelines, just one after the other, rotating in and out the way that some of those top teams do in the Big Ten and the SEC, it does have a couple of edge rushers that I like. It's got some skilled linebackers. It's got some real difference makers. And so, again, that is not going to make you the 33rd team when you're comparing yourself to the NFL. But I do think that North Carolina can be the 3rd team in the ACC, even without having to have a multi-year build to be able to get there.
Yeah, and again, I think that because Bill is great at coaching, that it gives them a chance to win the games on the margins, to not lose games. They got the most out of basically every season under Bill Belichick in the NFL until the talent completely fell off the board. Until they were absolutely bereft of talent. They got the most out of basically every season, and that's against pros. Here against, I think they'll win. They'll win enough in year 1 to keep everybody excited about year 2. That's why I say in year 2, we'll get, I think, better players, which should lead maybe to a greater finish. All right, I want to get to a couple of other things before I let you go.
Oh, can I throw one more note on this? At the hire, there was a lot of ties to Deion Sanders at Colorado. It didn't always work. It was a little bit messy, but I will tie back in this way. No one believed that Deion Sanders would be heading into year 3 at Colorado.
That is true.
And he is, right? And in year 2, he had them tied for first place in the Big 12 standings at the end of the regular season.
Yep.
So he went from 4-8 to it was 7-2, 9-4, I guess, or 9-3 by the end of the season. Maybe they finished 10-3 overall, but I think that it is important that when we talk about what the future looks like, what the outlook is like, a lot of that could change by the time we actually get out there and start playing games.
All right, let me ask you about Ohio State, who lost both their offensive and defensive coordinators. Chip Kelly took, I believe, $17 billion to go back to the NFL and be a coordinator. And who is it? Kurt Roper? Is that? Did I get that? No.
Jim Knowles, the other
former Duke assistant, goes to Penn State to be the defensive coordinator. Are those big losses for Ohio State?
Yes, they are. They are significant. They are not unforeseen, because when Ryan Day hired Chip Kelly, I think that there was always the belief that Chip Kelly wants to get back to the NFL, because before he took the Ohio State job, you will remember that position was actually occupied by Bill O'Brien.
Right.
And then Bill O'Brien left to go back to the NFL. Chip Kelly gets hired away from UCLA, but even when Chip Kelly was the sitting head coach at UCLA, the word was out that he would leave to go be an NFL offensive coordinator. So he took the next best thing, Ohio State offensive coordinator.
Right, exactly.
And then the Jim Knowles was a poaching. I mean, just call it what it is. Penn State goes, they lose their defensive coordinator to Clemson. They go and they get Jim Knowles. And what we have seen since then is a little bit of, our old friend Bomani Jones. Do you remember the Homeboy Hall of Fame?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so everybody at Ohio State's getting internal promotions and raises. It's amazing. I mean, it's like Ryan Day gets a new 7-year deal, $12.5 million a year.
$12.5 million. That's
Brian
amazing.
Hartline's promoted to co-offensive coordinator, and also another co-offensive coordinator. And we might bring in another co-offensive coordinator. Matt Patricia might come in as the defensive coordinator. Larry Johnson still the defensive line coach. Who gets a raise? Who gets a say? Who's calling plays? Who knows? Everybody's getting paid, baby. They went down that road in Columbus on that title parade, and they handed Ryan Day the money gun, and he just looked up to all of his coaching friends and went, and that's exactly what we have going on at Ohio State, because you know what? It's Ohio daggum State.
Yep.
They are still going to be great. Are they going to be at the very, very, very top of the sport no matter who's coaching? No, they do need a Chip Kelly, Jim Knowles, to be able to like really take you over the top. But we're talking about 3 games a year. Ohio State rolls out of bed with you and me as coordinators. Yeah. They win 8-9 games a year. Obviously, the Michigan one is the one we're really concerned about. But, like, that is one of those games. And so that's what I'm looking at right now because they're losing a lot of players off the national championship team. They are losing both of their coordinators. It's significant. So
I've said this before. I've said this before about Ohio State. It's really the only program that has essentially been mistake-proof at head coach. You go back and you look, every single coach. I mean, sometimes they have failed to beat, Michigan. Right. John Cooper failed to beat Michigan.
But John Cooper was a stellar head coach.
Great head coach. Right. And he did, toward the end, he didn't win a ton. Like there were some 8 wins, I think, at the end of John Cooper. But for the most part, they were like 10-win seasons. All of them. Every one of their coaches has been successful on the whole. They really do. If you don't beat Michigan, you're probably not there for very long. It will wear. So I just wonder if Ryan Day goes 2 more years without beating the Wolverines, what happens there? We'll see. Let me ask you one more thing. Tom Fornelli wrote about it, and this is sort of a big picture thing. This doesn't have to necessarily be about football. I've thought about this more in a context of UNC basketball. Fornelli wrote, National Signing Day is dead, which, look, Tom is great. I do think the second one kind of is because the first one was we just had it, and the portal's been open. There was very little fanfare around this signing day, which used to be a celebration, right? It used to be like this was our National Signing Day, and everybody was excited. We had whirring fax machines everywhere. But the emphasis on the portal, has that hurt high school recruiting? Because I think it has, specific to North Carolina basketball. Their freshman recruiting just hasn't been great for almost 10 years.
Can I stay in college football with this one?
You can.
Because I do think National Signing Day is dead also has to do with the fact that top recruits aren't waiting until National Signing Day to have a big hat ceremony. And the reason that they're doing it is because they're NCAA doesn't allow inducements. Yeah. But like they are agreeing to deals that are more binding than any bagman was able to deliver. And that like those last minute conversations with the uncle on February 2nd that would go deep into the night and the days of these SEC coordinators boxing each other out. I'm going to stay in this living room till 11:59 just to make sure that it turns to midnight and the 2 guys in the driveway don't get in here. Like those wars that used to be fought leading up to National Signing Day that would lead to these poor 17-year-olds drenched in sweat. Their parents want them to go one place. Their uncle wants them to go somewhere else. Their high school coach might have a third school. And then they play this game with puppies and hats and all kinds of pump fakes. Like that is all gone.
Yeah.
Because it's all been put. Again, NCAA says no inducements, but it's been put in black and white. It has been put in a contract. It has been put in this is what is going to be delivered. This is what your experience is going to be. This is the NIL payment. This is how everything is going to be set up, the way you will be compensated for bringing your talents to my school. And these top high school prospects are getting that locked up 2 months before now. Before even the winter National Signing Day hits. Bryce Underwood, the number 1 player in the class, the quarterback who is drawing legitimate comparisons to Cam Newton, who was with LSU forever, then flipped to Michigan because of legitimately Oracle money. Not like I see the future Oracle, but like the multi-billion-dollar company Oracle, because Oracle helped Michigan buy Bryce Underwood, but even that was announced a month before the early signing day.
Right.
And so National Signing Day is dead. High school recruiting is not. the pomp and circumstance of National Signing Day, the dramatics of National Signing Day have been killed by NIL because there is not negotiation deep into the night. There is very clear positional value, salary cap-like decisions that have been made well before that Wednesday in December or that Wednesday in February.
I just appreciate that you brought puppies into this. And
Isaiah Crowell, former Georgia running back Isaiah Crowell, had a little bulldog puppy that he held up. And what I think was one of my first national signing days as a CBS Sports employee. I mean, Adam, I used to wake up at 6 a.m. preparing for a 12-hour workday.
I know.
Of like, I'm going to be on this live stream of a local news outlet in Omaha to see if this guy goes to Nebraska or Iowa. And you know what? They all look alike.
They do.
Okay? They're all 6'3", they're all 315, they're all corn-fed boys, and they're all going to the Big Ten, but we got to figure out which way he's going.
You're the best. Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast, Chip_Patterson on Twitter. He brought puppies into it, and I appreciate that. Talk to you next week, my friend.
Sounds good. Y'all be well.